Hello, good morning everyone. Here's another lesson. This is now for section 2.3, the percent proportion. If you're wondering where I am, I'm in my brother's house in Everett, Massachusetts. I should be there soon. For this lesson, you will need your notebook. If you don't have your notebook, you may use a sheet of paper, or you may write notes on the margin of page 122 of your textbook. Let's repeat that, page 122. Recall that a percent is a fraction whose denominator is 100. So 68% means 68 over 100. %25 means 25 over 100. And 150% means 150 over 100. And so on. Percents are useful because it is easier to compare fractions that have same denominators. For example, you may not be sure which fraction is bigger, 1/4 or 2/5. But if they were both converted to percent, as in 1/4 is equal to 25%, and 2/5 is equal to 40%, then it is clear that 25% is less than 40%. By the way, a really easy way to convert fractions to percents is by using the calculator. So as you can see here, I have a calculator here. All you have to do is divide the numbers that are participating in the fraction. So for example, 1/4, just do 1 divided by 4. So that says 0.25. As you can see, the decimal point is here. If you move the decimal point twice to the right, you give you 25, which is what percent that is. So divide the numbers and then move the decimal point twice to the right. Let's try that for the other one, 2/5. So let's try that. 2 divided by 5. That gives me 0.4. So as you can see, there's only one digit here, right? So if you move the decimal point twice, that will generate a 0. So this turns into 40%, as we found out over here. Because of this, it is often useful to answer questions of the form blank is blank percent of blank. To make that sentence clear, we can use variables to differentiate among the values, like so. N equals P% of D. To convert this statement into math, we will need to use our previous knowledge. The variable P is a percent, so it's a fraction over 100. So this can be written as P over 100. The variable n stands for the numerator and d stands for the denominator. That is, n over d is another fraction. Since these two fractions represent the same situation, the two fractions must be equal, which means that n over d is equal to p over 100. This very useful formula is the percent proportion. And every percent problem whose sentence is of the form above can be translated to the percent proportion. I want to note here that my percent proportion does not look like what it does in the book. I guess in the book they're calling the n the part and the d is the whole. So this is saying P over W, or part over whole, is equal to percent over 100. The reason I'm using N and D here is because part You know, the letter P, I'm already using it as percent. So this is just much clearer, at least to me. If you're having trouble, just compare this equation with the one on page 122 of your book. Notice that there are 3 variables in the percent proportion. This means that each percent proportion problem involves 3 numbers. Let us first look at a percent proportion with no unknowns, with no variables, if you will. This one. 3 is 75% of 4. The number 75 is marked with a percent, as you can see here, or the symbol percent. So this must be the percent. Four is marked with the word of. Remember that 4 is always, this number 4 is after the word of, which means that it must be the denominator, or D. The number 3 is not marked particularly, so this must be the numerator, or N. Therefore, the math version of 3 is 75% of 4 is 3 over 4 is equal to 75 over 100. Take a moment right now to see how this information is put into this formula to give us this proportion, this resulting proportion right here. Is this proportion true? How can you check? You should remember that proportions can be checked using cross multiplying. Applying this to the proportion above, we have 3 times 100, which gives me 300. And 4 times 75, which also gives us 300. So we can see that this statement, 3 is 75% of 4, is true because we checked it by cross multiplying. Since the percent proportion is proportion, it can be solved if one of the numbers is missing. Take for example the sentence, what is 40% of 15? You should see that 40 is the percent and 15 is the denominator, based on the words around them. Remember, the word of indicates the denominator and the percent symbol indicates the percent. This means that the word what is the numerator and it is missing, meaning we don't know what the numerator is. The sentence then becomes the proportion x over 15, remember, numerator divided by the denominator, is equal to 40 over 100. We can then use cross multiplying to find out what x is. So this results in x times 100, or 100x, is equal to 40 times 15. So 40 times 15, what is that? Well, we can use our calculator. 40 times 15 is equal to 600, right? So 100x is equal to 600. If 100x is equal to 600, then we can divide both sides by 100. Let's do that quickly. To get x is equal to, well, what is 600 divided by 100? So divide by 100 gives me 6. Therefore, the complete version of this statement is 6 is 40% of 15. Let's take another example with one unknown. 35 is what percent of 70? First, let's check how these numbers are marked. So 35 is not marked, which makes it the numerator. 70 is preceded by the word of, so it is the denominator. And this time, the word what, right here, is marked by the word percent. So this time, we are looking for the number over 100, right? So this is the percent. And so we can write 35 over 70 is equal to x over 100. Let's then try cross multiplying here. So 35 times 100 on the calculator. 35 times 100 gives me 3,500 or 3,500. And that's going to be equal to whatever this is, which is 70 times x. Since we don't know what x is, we can just say 70x. Dividing 3,500 by 70 gives us 50. Therefore, 35 is 50% of 70. Before we look at the last of my examples, notice that there may be a shortcut in solving the previous problem. You may have noticed that 35 is 1/2 of 70, in which case the correct percent must be 50, which was correct. The most surefire way to learn these shortcuts is through practice. That is, using or doing lots of problems like this and noticing patterns or common answers that you always seem to get. Now let's look at constructing a percent proportion out of the sentence 5 is 20% of what number? 5 is not marked, so it is the numerator. 20 is the percent because of the symbol percent. And the word what after the word of means that the denominator is unknown. Putting this together as a proportion, we have 5 over x is equal to 20 over 100. Cross multiplying yields 5 times 100, or 500, is equal to 20 times x, or 20x. Dividing 500 by 20 gives us that x should be, alright, well, let's try this. 500 divided by 20 gives us 25. So the completed sentence is 5 is 20% of 25. Here's another shortcut that may be handy. Notice that 5 is divisible by 20. Actually, let me write that again. so that it might be easier to see. Notice that 5 is divisible by 20. Divisible just means that you can multiply 5 by a whole number to get 20, and you can divide 20 by a whole number to get 5. This means that 5 can be multiplied by a whole number to get 20. In this case, 5 must be multiplied by 4 to get 20. Let's write that down a little bit, like here. Multiplied by 4 to give 20. In that case, x then also needs to be multiplied by 4 to get 100. Ask yourself, what number multiplied by 4 gives me 100? This is multiplying in reverse, which is essentially division. So what you really want is 100 divided by 4. Let's try that. 100 divided by 4 is equal to 25, which was the answer that we got earlier. I want you to notice that in these examples, I was not hesitant in using a calculator, and you should not be as well. As you know, there are calculators in the classroom, and if you have a calculator app on your phone, you can use that if you have access to your phone, or you can avail yourself of a 4-function calculator or a scientific calculator like I have here. Nothing too fancy. That's something that can just do the 4 operations would be quite enough for the rest of the exercises we're going to be doing this quarter. So yeah, feel free to use a calculator for any of these exercises. I hope that these examples are helpful in understanding how to use the percent proportion. Please have a look on pages 122 to 124. Then try the guided problems and the guided practice at the end of the lesson. Thank you for your attention and participation, and may God bless all of you. See you all soon.